Thank you. I am aware that we're running over and lunch awaits. I'm hungry, so I'll try and rattle through this as quickly as possible. I'm going to talk to you today about retail crime and the importance of fighting it together. I'm going to look at the latest annual retail crime survey and highlight some of the statistics from that. Then also look at some of the key challenges facing the retail sector over the next 12 months. And then explain a little bit about how the BRC is working with its members to overcome some of these challenges. Before I start, I'm just going to say a little bit about the British Retail Consortium. We're the lead trade association representing a whole range of retailers, from large multiples and department stores through to small independent stores. Our members sell a wide selection of products through town centres and high streets, out-of-town developments, and both rural and virtual stores. We represent about 80% of the UK's retail industry, with around 30,000 small-medium companies in membership and 70 major retailers trading out of 190 fascias. We have a diverse membership representing both in and out of town, food and non-food, and traditional plus online retailers. The BRC is seen as the authoritative voice of retail and is recognised for its powerful campaigning and lobbying and influence with government, and as a provider of valuable retail information. We work closely with government on a number of campaigning and policy issues on behalf of our members, and over the years have built a number of firm and constructive relationships with government departments, regulatory agencies and non-governmental organisations. Looking specifically then at retail crime policy, there are a number of ways that we're able to influence the local agenda. First of all, we have a National Retail Crime Steering Group. This was established in 2007 and is currently co-chaired with the BRC and also the Home Office, chaired at the moment by the Minister for Crime Prevention and Antisocial Behaviour, Lord Henley. This offers us with an excellent opportunity to work with key stakeholders within the Home Office and also those responsible for policing injustice to ensure that retailers are involved in shaping policies. And the purpose of this group is to identify and share best practice examples to effectively reduce retail crime. We also have the Heads of Security Committee. And the purpose of this group is to protect people, property and product in the retail industry by raising public awareness of the impact of retail crime on communities, to work with government and the judiciary to improve responses to and the treatment of retail crime, to identify good practice, to work with each other and relevant police and government agencies, and to generally improve retail competitiveness by reducing the impact of crime and loss. To support the Heads of Security Committee, we also have a number of issue-specific working groups to address each of our priority areas, as discussed at the Heads of Security Committee on an annual basis. Current working groups are tackling retail violence, cash and valuable in transit, local engagement and e-crime and fraud, and I'll talk a little more about these later on. And we also have the annual retail crime survey. And this is used to help us provide evidence of the scale of retail crime and to ensure that the full impact that these offences have is clearly understood as we continue to work closely with government, the police and the judiciary to influence policy decisions relating to retail crime. So looking now then at the crime survey and some of the key findings. This year's survey was published in January. It was completed by 52 retailers, accounting for 53% of total UK retail turnover. The survey found that crime had cost £1.4 billion in 2010-11. This is actually the equivalent to 130,000 full-time retail jobs. Despite reductions in the number of offence types, the overall cost had risen by 31% when compared to the previous year. This is partially due to continued investment by the retail sector to better protect their premises and their people. The survey reporting a 1.4 increase in expenditure on crime and loss prevention, with an average spend of £700,000 per retailer. But it's also down to more systematic targeting of higher value goods, therefore indicating increasing organised offending. Retail crime was thrust into the spotlight last summer when we witnessed widespread rioting and disorder across the country. These offences had a significant impact on retail businesses, but most importantly on retail staff and customers. Whilst it's reassuring to see that a number of those responsible were remanded in custody and given custodial sentences, it's absolutely crucial that retail crime now remains high on the agenda. We're therefore continuing to work closely with the police and judiciary to ensure that those who continue to offend against us receive more effective sentencing. We therefore included an extensive section in the last survey to make sure that the findings from the riots were well known. We found that 6.9% of all retail outlets were affected, and that the riots impacted over 20,000 retail staff, and this actually represents 1.5% of all retail employees. The average cost per incident was over £8,150, and whilst the majority of offences were burglary and criminal damage, the majority of retailers were significantly affected by store closures, which was a significant problem due to the inconsistent messaging between what was being given by the local police and the strategic command teams. Now I'd like to look at customer theft. Unsurprisingly, this is the majority of losses by value, equating to just short of 60% of all losses. Despite a 19% reduction in incidents per 100 stores, the cost associated with customer theft continued to climb, with the average cost per incident rising by 21% to £85.50. Our survey found a total of 444,990 incidents. However, a similar number were unreported to the police. If we were to therefore provide an estimate for the true level of offending for the entire retail sector, the number of incidents is therefore more likely to be in the region of 1.5 to 2 million offences. Employee theft, and we heard a lot about this earlier. Employee theft equated to 3.7% of retail crime by value. The number of offences had also fallen by 24% when compared to the previous year. However, the average cost had again risen by 18% to £342.17. This is due to the significant and continued investment by retailers in solutions such as data mining, and therefore still remains well below the 7-year average of £537. Burglaries equated to 5.8% of retail crime by value. The number of incidents reported in this year's survey had again fallen by 42% per 100 stores, and were actually at their lowest rate since 2004. However, the cost per incident had risen significantly by 83% to an average of £2,093. This is strong evidence of the systematic targeting of higher value goods, and when we combine this with a reported change in the modus operandi, indicates an increase in organised offending. There'd also been an increase in criminal damage of 63% to 32.6 incidents per 100 stores. Interesting, the level of offences that were due to attempted burglary had dramatically reduced. However, we saw a significant increase in offences attributed to antisocial behaviour, which is interesting, especially when this actually extracted the riot data. Retailers attributed this to an increase in antisocial behaviour, but also to an increase in incidents of metal theft, and this is perhaps something that we'll look at in future surveys. Fraud had significantly increased, with 78% of retailers reporting a rise. This increase also now means that fraud represents 12.3% of all retail crime by the number of incidents and 28.2% by cost, meaning that it's second to customer theft. Retailers reported just over half of these offences to the police, indicating that the true cost of fraud offences is likely to be much more substantial, and I'll return to this a little later. Most worrying was the reported rise in violent offences such as robbery, which had increased by 20% per 100 stores. This represented 1.3% of all retail crime by value, with the average cost rising by 17% to £999. Whilst the average cost remains below the average of £2,658, Most worrying was the reported increase in the use of weapons and the higher level of physical violence against staff. Looking at violence against staff, there'd been quite a dramatic increase by 83% to 25.7 offences per 1,000 employees. Whilst this might not sound a lot, it means that over 35,300 retail staff reported threats, verbal or physical abuse. The level of physical abuse had actually fallen this year by 62.8%. However, there'd been a significant increase in verbal abuse and threats of violence, with verbal abuse rising by over 560% and threats of violence by just short of 340%. One of the reasons for this increase could be down to some of the work that's being undertaken by the BRC's Tackling Retail Violence Working Group. This is a priority issue for the BRC and therefore has a specific group aimed at tackling the underreporting of offences and also sharing best practice amongst our members. We've worked really closely with the Union for Shop, Distributive and Allied Workers over the past couple of years to identify good practice being used by retailers and establish the working group to take this a stage further. So we've worked with members to understand some of the triggers for violence in the workplace and to understand also some of the reasons for underreporting. By discussing best practice, the BRC will soon be launching best practice guidelines for retailers. And this will look at a number of key areas. First of all, developing a policy, and this will show the importance of having a clear policy that shows that violence in the workplace should not be tolerated. It'll look at creating a safe working environment, also looking at prevention and the importance of identifying and responding to the triggers, training to reinforce the policy, and also post-incident management to reassure and support employees who do suffer from this abuse. This replicates guidance that's previously been produced by the Cash and Valuable in Transit Working Group, which is a really good example of effective partnership, where action by the police, the industry and retailers have secured a dramatic reduction of around 40% in offences. I'd like to turn now to a few of the other significant challenges for the coming year and share how the BRC is working with its members to tackle these. We've heard quite a lot about police and crime commissioners. The locally elected police and crime commissioners will take office on the 22nd of November this year. This will follow elections on the week of the 15th of November. The role of the PCC is to ensure that the local police are accountable to the local community, including local business. Elections will be held in 41 of the 43 police forces, which is all of the forces except for London, where the Met will be accountable to the Mayor's office. It does, however, bring a number of challenges for retail. Whilst the BRC has supported the move away from nationally imposed targets towards greater local accountability, we are concerned about how local policing priorities will be determined by the commissioners and how we can ensure that it's of relevance to the business community when they do not get the opportunity to vote for the commissioner. The lack of an agreed definition of business crime will make it difficult to quantify the extent and the impact of retail crime and the impact that this has not only on the retail sector, but also on the wider community. As we know, many crimes go unreported because victims do not believe the police will take any action, or if they do, that the offenders will be brought to justice. Retail crime historically has been seen as victimless and is therefore ranked as a lower priority than many other offences. The challenge is therefore to ensure that retail is seen as a key partner in the community and treated as such. Through the BRC's Local Engagement Working Group, we're therefore looking to create a guidance document for the police and crime commissioners. This will show the true extent and nature of retail crime and really try and show the importance of retail. As we know, retail is at the heart of local communities, employing close to 3 million people across the country and providing local goods and services to consumers. The sector is an essential contributor to economic growth and to the regeneration of areas affected by crime and disorder. The guidance will therefore look at this and also highlight the fact that those committing retail crimes are likely to be taking part in other offences within the local area. perceptions of crime are undoubtedly shaped by what people see and hear in their local stores, including the 1 in 9 employed in retail. The guidelines will also look at promoting effective partnership practice. Retailers recognise that they have responsibilities in supporting community safety, and the latest survey showed us that the great majority of retailers, 97% in fact, encourage their staff to engage with local police teams. Over half of retailers, 56%, also support local business crime reduction partnerships. In addition, retailers continue to make a significant investment to protect themselves, their premises and their people, with an overall spend on crime and loss prevention of £214 million reported in the latest survey. While we acknowledge that priorities would be driven at the local level, we also need to ensure that there's an effective mechanism which recognises and shares effective practice across each of the force areas. This will provide support to the locally elected commissioners and will remove duplication of effort and resource. It will also provide business with the reassurance that they need that there is a coherent and consistent approach and that this will be applied across the different force areas. The BRC has tried to do its bit to support this, and I'll to speak a little more about the website which is up there, Tackling Retail Crime Together. I'll speak about that in a moment. The guidelines will also look at effectively tackling violence and antisocial behaviour, and this will follow the work that's being done by the Violence Working Group. Current proposals are that the police and crime commissioners will have responsibility for local justice. It's therefore essential that business is acknowledged as a victim of crime and that victims of retail crime, specifically violence and abuse, receive an equitable response from the police and the criminal justice process. And finally, the guidance will look at tackling serious and organised crime. The BRC has highlighted previously our concern at the lack of cross-border collaboration on criminal activity. And whilst we're reassured to see that the commissioners will have a strong duty to collaborate to tackle cross-border national and international crimes, we are concerned about how the duty to respond to these issues, which affect the community, will be balanced against the demands of serious and organised offences. The lack of a measurement for business crime will make it really difficult to justify taking action against offenders who are not regarded as directly impacting the local community. This is especially relevant to offences such as e-crime and fraud, and I'll speak about this in a little more detail in a moment. As I mentioned, the BRC has established a website to support the guidelines that we're giving to the police and crime commissioners. It's called Tackling Retail Crime Together, and it's been a joint project with the Association of Convenience Stores. The website's been designed to enable retailers to share best practice examples of how they're supporting their local communities and policing teams to reduce crime and criminality. The website provides practical case studies of how retail is creating safe and vibrant communities and will hopefully encourage the local police to make more effective use of the support that's offered by retailers. Another area for the local engagement working group is partnerships. With greater local accountability and the introduction of police and crime communities, the opportunities for local partnerships who represent the business community have never been stronger. However, we need to ensure that retailers obtain maximum benefits from these partnerships. It's therefore important that there's greater consistency amongst the partnerships, and it's vital that they're able to clearly demonstrate how they are serving the needs of their business members and therefore returning on investment. Through the National Retail Crime Steering Group, the BRC is working with partnerships to identify and disseminate good practice and is also looking at ways to ensure consistency amongst the partnerships. Through the Local Engagement Working Group, the BRC will also be producing a list of key questions that store managers need to be asking of their local partnerships. This will ensure that retailers obtain true value from their membership and hopefully influence how the partnerships communicate their successes with the retail members. Looking now then at e-crime and fraud. Online retailing is the future for many businesses and increasingly important to the economy. The value of internet retailing in 2011 was £27 billion. This was a 21% increase when compared to the previous year, with online sales currently equating to around 9% of retail sales. and this figure is expected to grow by around 10% annually. To enable e-commerce to reach its full potential, it's essential that consumer confidence is supported and enhanced. Retailers need to be sure that as they seek to expand their businesses via e-commerce, the customers they attract will be well protected. Retailers invest significantly to protect their customers. However, we are concerned that the law enforcement community has failed to keep pace with the rapidly expanding threat of online crime. Despite the existence of various law enforcement agencies with responsibility for e-crime and fraud, there does not appear to be any genuine coordination or oversight of the work that's being undertaken, and the opportunity to share valuable intelligence is therefore being lost. This is further compounded by the fact that frequently offences reported by retailers fall outside of the remit of these specialist agencies. And therefore retailers are handed back to local police forces, which often don't have the willingness, expertise or resources to be able to deal with these offences. The BRC is therefore called for improved law enforcement communication. Frequently we find that law enforcement agencies waste time and resources by unnecessarily conducting investigative work which has already been undertaken by the retailer. If there was an agreed standard for acceptance, this would minimise confusion and save time and resources. There also needs to be much greater transparency of the case acceptance criteria for each of the law enforcement agencies involved in tackling this area. Through the BRC's E-Crime and Fraud Working Group, we've continued to work closely with policymakers, and this is especially important at the moment as the plans for the Economic Crime Command and Cybercrime Unit, all under the umbrella of the National Crime Agency, are progressed. The BRC is just undertaking some research to be able to quantify the true impact of e-crime on the retail sector and hope that we can use this when lobbying the government for a better response. The BRC has also recently established a retail cybersecurity forum with the Department of Business. This was established following the publication of last year's cybersecurity strategy, which set out the vision for the UK to derive huge economic and social value from a vibrant, secure and resilient cyberspace. The forum will play its part in supporting economic prosperity and growth by building a more trusted and resilient digital environment. The purpose of the forum is to support cooperation between the government and industry on cybersecurity, working hand in hand to make the UK one of the most secure places in the world to do business. The forum will provide a knowledge exchange amongst its members and broader partners and will provide a mechanism to collaborate, inform, consult and communicate. And finally, one of the biggest challenges for this year, the Olympics. This summer, the eyes of the world will be focused on London as the capital provides the main stage for the 2012 Olympic and Paralympic Games. With such interest and a huge influx of visitors, few businesses in London will be unaffected by the Games, and all of us will need to consider safety and security implications, making the necessary preparations where appropriate. This covers not only the physical security of premises, but also the safety of individuals at their place of work and as they move around the city for business or for leisure. The scale of the Games is significant. There's 10.8 million ticket holders, 14,000 athletes from over 200 countries, just under 10,000 team officials and up to 21,000 accredited media. Staging the Games is therefore equivalent to holding 46 World Championships at the same time. Security must therefore be robust, comprehensive and proportionate to ensure a safe and secure Games that London, the UK and the world can enjoy. A key part of achieving this will be a new partnership which has been born between business, the police and government, and it's known as the Cross-Sector Safety and Security Communications Project, better known as CSSC, which is a lot easier to say. Over the past 18 months, this unique partnership between the Metropolitan Police Service, the Home Office, and 23 business sector groups has created a communication structure that's already in operation on the run-up to the Games and will continue afterwards as a lasting legacy to safety and security in the capital. Its aim is to ensure that businesses factor safety and security into their everyday operations, and more importantly, that they're kept abreast of any relevant safety and security activity and how it might affect them. This is a significant step forward following last year's riots, and hopefully a new way of enhanced communication between law enforcement agencies and the business community. If anyone would like further information on anything that I've said today, please do come and see me afterwards, and hopefully I haven't run over too long. Thank you very much.